All right, everybody. I hope you are doing well. As promised, I told you I will get back to you here talking about what happened in Hong Kong, but also talking about what happened in Taiwan with the shutdown of the CDI, which was not being reported aggressively here in the West. So, welcome to Geopolitics in Conflict Show. I'm your host, Dr. David Walaloo. Here is how I'm going to approach this one here. I'm going to talk to you about the Hong Kong situation first. Then I'll provide also insights about the Taiwan situations. And we can draw a quick comparison between the two. So this way you reach your own conclusion. So, well, we all know that, at least here in the West, with the media reporting about the Hong Kong media outlet, the Stand News, that was raided a few days ago, and about six of its current and former employees were detained, so arrested, that is. So, well, here's the thing. So the question becomes is, as I said last time, okay, the question becomes, why will the press will be detained per se, or why would you put a lid on a media per se? Because media usually speaks the truth, not all of it, of course. We all know that story. So, but the question becomes, because it was how it was reported in the West versus how it is or it was on the ground. Two separate stories. And this is why, you guys, if I can give you an advice, the advice is, when you read a headline, when you read something, always take a step back, okay, and check on the information to verify that particular information you are reading, because words can be manipulative. So we all know this, and I don't need to waste time on this one here. But here is the thing with the idea of this Stand News, because Hong Kong is part of China. And here's the argument that has not been what's the word I'm looking for? Been not disclosed openly by the West in explaining, for example, how for China, Hong Kong, because the systems, what China is trying to do, China's system is sort of works for it, but it cannot sort of integrate how Hong Kong is going, the direction it is going. And we all know how the demonstrations and protests and all the stuff starts in Hong Kong, And just from off the bat, I am not here to defend China or defend Hong Kong or defend Taiwan or anybody. I am here just to provide the facts to the best of my knowledge and let you reach your own conclusions. So it becomes a question of any government in this case. If you got a media outlet that is spewing lies, for example, that is spewing propaganda, that is spewing misinformation, that is spewing or promoting sedition, what will become your role, you as a government? You're going to have to put sort of, as we say, put the dots on the letters by explaining to this media outlet, you can't be doing this because it's against the law. And rightly so. We all witnessed how the media lies. Look no further than, for example, in Australia, given what just happened with Novak. And I just did some sort of a brief on it. So, or look at even in London, in England, or Germany, or France, or the US, certain media outlets will have to sort of reword things certain ways. Well, why don't you just come on and say the truth rather than wording it certain ways? So if China had to react that way, if it is purely because it had evidence that, this particular news outlet, the Stand News, was indeed engaged in sedition, that's a different story. Because if China, the government that is, will just climb on a media that is reporting the facts, that is problematic. But at least based on what I found and read from different sources, that is not the case. And I'm going to provide you some sort of an example to just highlight how this has happened. Well, just for those who might not know about the story, Stand News has been operating in Hong Kong since about, I think, what was it, 2013, 14, somewhere around that time. And it was known for its pro democracy sort of editorial position. You know, yeah, that's fine if that is what they do or that's what they stand for. But here is the problem: is it that's what it stands for because it's been promoted by an outside entity? Does it take that stand because it's been financed by another government? Because we all know we came to the realization of what led to the demonstrations and protests in Hong Kong to begin with. So, could that play a role into this big picture? I would say so. You know, there's this argument that, well, no, they shut down the Stand News because it was critical of the Chinese government. You know, well, if it is critical of the Chinese government and has evidence on whatever, by no means let it be. But if it is promoting lies and misinformation, that's a different story. So the government, Chinese or otherwise, in this case, will have that authority to step forward and put an end to it. So, and this is what happened with this news stand, especially after the Chinese passed what they call the national security law. I think because China's thinking about it in terms of Hong Kong is part of China. So, and as I said at the beginning, two systems will not work. Two systems as far as the mainland and the capitalist systems within Hong Kong. It's not going to work. You know, Chinese system, it's by itself. That's how it's going to work for them. You know, that's like for us here in the West, we say, well, the China needs to be democratic. No, they do not need to be democratic because that's how their system is. You know, same thing for us. Will the Chinese model work for us here? No, it won't work. It will be a problem. That's just how the systems work. And it becomes the question of, you know, who are we to decide what that system is right and that system is wrong, that system is good, that system is flawed. You know, live and let live. You live by the system that works for you. You don't dictate to others how their system is. You know, and the problem is with this Stand News, if it was the engagement of the what's the word I'm looking for? The misinformation or propaganda, whatever you want to call it, start to define certain acts like subversions, okay, like cessations, like terrorism, and so forth. We all see where this is going, you know, and that becomes a question of what can the government, Chinese that is, in Beijing become decisive and make a decision on this, and that was the decision they did. You know, there are those who argue, well, no, this is the crackdown on the, because right after that one, I think 6 months or so after, it was another pro-democracy publication called, based on what I found at Apple Daily, if I'm not mistaken. You know, that one too was forced to close. But again, we can't jump to conclusion till we know why. Why was it end up being closed? It's because its founder was colluding with the foreign elements or foreign governments or foreign entities, whatever you want to call it. And to any government, let's just for a moment pretend that it's not China, it's country A, you know. And if country A find out that one of its entities inside is colluding with a foreign government, foreign entity, foreign whatever you want to call it, that becomes a ground for endangering what you may call your national security. That was the exact case in the daily in the Apple Daily case. You know, its founder, and his name is Jimmy Lai. And I do remember hearing about his case way back, you know, because he was at that time was arrested and charged with collusion with the foreign elements. That was back in 2020. So I'm familiar with his name, Lai, Lai. So, and that becomes the question. So, uh, does the government inside in Beijing has the right to act to ensure that things don't get out of control, or we're gonna be portraying that as a claim on the press? You reach that conclusion, not me. I can't speak for you. You know, the reason why I can't speak for you because is it is upon you to evaluate the information and you reach your own conclusion. The way I look at it personally, and this is for me and my personal opinion in my own country here, is that I'm already starting to witness what happened to that freedom of speech. What happened to, with censorship. We all know this is why there are certain things I don't detail right here on this platform. And you guys know why. There is no need to beat the dead horse over this. So, and that becomes the question of when you have a media entity, that is usually the ethical aspects of a media is to ensure the accuracy of information. But if you have a media outlet, doesn't matter who, the Stand the News or any other, start to propagate misinformation, start to be biased, start to sort of demonize whatever in its reporting, then that becomes a problem. And actually, there was a case with the Stand the News that they did a reporting on the conditions in prison that weren't true, based on what I found out. That's what prompted the person in charge of the security part in Hong Kong to address that issue when it comes down to Stand the News, and that's what the Beijing made the decision it did. What I found very interesting also, what I found rather interesting also is that there's a guy by the name Benedict Rogers. He was the co-founder and the CEO of the non-governmental organization Hong Kong Watch. What the title should give you a hint. I'm going to repeat it. Non-governmental organization Hong Kong Watch. So, yeah. So the guy saying that way, I'll criticize the raid and so forth because when a free press, and I quote here, when a free press guaranteed by Hong Kong basic law is labeled seditious, it is symbol of the speed at which one great open international city has descended into a little more than a police state. End of quote. This is what Rogers said. But he omitted from disclosing that, what happened to the propagation of misinformation. Because we all know how the protest started in Hong Kong. And I'm not going to get into the details of this one here, because you have to know the background of something before you decide on, okay, this is where the story starts. So to think about it this way, we can look at another aspect of it. Interesting enough is that at least here in the West, when the report came out, and I do know that this event took place on December 28th, the 28th, 29th, but it's been brewing for a few weeks ago, and how the media was here in the West preparing to sort of report on the issue. What the media failed to address, it was that similar issues was happening in Taipei, in Taiwan, but from the opposite end to the story. This one has to do with a news channel that the Taiwan government, the Tsai government, decided not to renew its license. And their argument, Tsai government, argued that it's because this channel appears to be pro-China. Okay, well, even if it is pro-China, and I'm just making an argument here, why would you shut it down instead of challenge it and say, hey, the reporting you are doing is not accurate? Because that's what I told you I will do if I found out that indeed China just claimed on the press just willy-nilly because it chose to do so. But that is not the case. So in the case of Taiwan, if they are to do this, why don't they face the news channel and say to them, no, what you are doing, it's not right, or provide the proof that they are indeed pro-China in their reporting. So the rejection of this CTI cable request is the first time Taiwan has shut. And makes you just wonder, okay, who's behind it and why that is? Of course, that decision didn't settle well with some other entities, and it provoked an anger, and rightly so, from the CTI. And also it was there is a Taiwan group or party, whatever you want to call it, that is a main opposition party. Yeah, because the way it was perceived, if we are to use the term that is used in the West, because it was perceived in Taiwan after the shutdown or refused the renewal of the license as an attack on media freedom. Won't you say the same? Why are you shutting it down if it wasn't proven? And I'm gonna get into the comparison between this one in Taiwan and the one in Hong Kong as I go through this. So the Tsai government has closed this CTI, okay, because CTI understood that this is the end of that freedom of expression, press freedom. It is the same argument we are making here in the West. When you start to see this massive censorship, what would you call it? Let's not sugarcoat it. What would you call it? You're right. I gotta shut it down, because that's what we are trying to. That's what we're starting to see. You got now some channels that have been deplatformed altogether. This is why we are very careful. I will use the term how we word certain things, and that's not right. That is not right, because you gotta say things the way they are. You gotta say the truth, and you gotta let the viewers, the listeners, reach their own conclusion. Even though this CTI in Taiwan, they did vow to fight back, legally speaking, because that is the way to resolve the matters. It's because the government cannot just say till you have a proof. In this case of Taiwan, they can't just say, oh, they are favoring this or favoring that or promoting this or promoting that, without justification, without proof. So, as a matter of fact, the CTI, they claim that it has received more than about 920 complaints last year. And about a third of that total, all of it, for all news channel in Taiwan. However, there was no evidence, and that's based on what I read and what I searched, no evidence that CTI has received Chinese government funding. Because funding is where the issue. Look no further what's going on in Australia. And when I say Australia, I'm referring to Rupert Murdoch. You guys know who he is. Because who's influencing, for example, Morrison policies? It's Murdoch, because he's the one who funded his election. You look at it for us in the US with Fox News. Who owns Fox News? It's Murdoch. When you look at it in Britain, who owns certain medias in Britain? Murdoch. So they own it. They can do whatever they want. They can say whatever they want you to hear. So here is what's interesting about all this. Tsai, president of Taiwan, Tsai's family owns two television stations. Could it be this is one way of shutting down the competition? Because it has the authority, the government, using it to favor one over another. No, because that is why, if you look at it from the big picture, if Tsai family owns two television stations and several newspapers and cable networks in Taiwan, you want the narrative to converge on one particular description or one particular narrative, that they all converge on that. You don't want any entity or news outlet to say things different. And that party that is the opposition, I think it's the name of it. It's, and pardon me if I mispronounce this, is the Kuomintang. Kuomintang. That's Taiwan main opposition. So it's because this idea of closing all this, I found it very interesting that it did not get the report or the reporting that similar to what happened in Hong Kong. And for me personally, and this is my personal opinion, makes me put a big question mark about not only the veracity, but the authenticity of these reportings coming out. So it's because if I am to assess this, I would say the shutting down of the CTI is like an ugly affair to begin with. Could it be because the Tsai government didn't like that this outlet was the sole one that didn't follow the guidance into how to report the news as directed by the government in Taiwan? So what the government end up doing in Taiwan here is they'll end up using all sort of accusations, all sort of manipulations, dirty tricks, and so forth, and especially coming from one particular entity in Taiwan, which is the NCC, that stands for National Communication Commission, because that was the hope of those members to shut it down. Because usually that's what people do in possession of power. They don't like to hear it, shut it down. And of course, it becomes the question for the stand news in Hong Kong, because it's been promoted certain ways. And yet, what took place in Hong Kong and took place in Taiwan, they don't have the same comparisons, because you can't compare those two. And this is why it's very, very important to understand where the pieces fit in with the big puzzle, the big picture. So if, as I said, like I said at the beginning, if a government A, let's just for a moment assume that government A, whatever that is, start to find out that there is an entity that's been financed, promoted, supported by outside elements to influence people's thinking, to create some sort of, I may use the term destabilize also, because that is the right word. Let's not sugarcoat it. What becomes the role of that? What becomes the obligation of that government? To put the dots on the letter and making sure that this needs to stop. If not, we shut it down. On the other hand, In the case of Taiwan, if you have the somebody in a position of authority, in this case, the Tsai family owns, owns TV, two other channels. Of course, you want to get rid of the competition. And speaking of Tsai, by the way, just FYI, I didn't forget to report to you the final verdict, shall we say, about her PhD. I am still waiting on that confirmation, and thus far there is no word yet. So I am still putting that question mark about President Tsai's doctoral degree, whether it was awarded legally or not. So, as I said last time, as of today, I will not address her as Dr. Tsai, because you can't use the term for someone who has not been legally awarded the degree. So, and when I get that information, I will get back to you on that. So, that is the reason why I wanted to address this with you guys, just to highlight to you, once again, it is not my place to tell you how to think. It is not my place to dictate, well, this is only this way or that way. No. And you know this. You know this already, guys. I refuse to do that. Why? Because you are independent intellectually. You're smart enough to know. You are wise enough to read between the lines. You understand the wording, the manipulation that exists. Look no further than what just took place in Kazakhstan, for example. Was Kazakhstan truly about this oil or liquefied natural gas prices increase? No, we all know. And that's what I'm saying. It is smart enough. You guys are smart enough to know on your own. The difference, at least on this platform here, is I can go into more depth into this as I do, for example, on locals. This is why I highly encourage you to go check us out at geopolitics.locals.com. Truly, I can talk freely over there. So, but at least for this one here is for you to know and understand. Okay, here's the story, because I promised you I will get back to you on this one here, and that is what I found. And usually the sources that I reach out to, that I'm not gonna just get whatever. And I have my ways of verifying the accuracy of the information. So the way to understand all this is to understand how the protests starts in Hong Kong in the first place. Because here's the thing: as of today, do you hear anything about Taiwan in comparison to what it was about 4 or 5 months ago? The hypes of tensions? No, because things have shifted now to Ukraine. Things have shifted to Kazakhstan. Things have shifted to now the pipeline between Turkmenistan and India, which I found very fascinating. And you know why? It's because China had a deal with Turkmenistan regarding energy. So it makes you wonder, who's pushing India behind the scenes to cut a deal with Turkmenistan? Not that the deal between Turkmenistan and China falls apart. No, still stands. But it's just very interesting how these dynamics change so quick. And this is what I always say, guys, when it comes down to understanding the geopolitical shifts, you need to keep an eye on the trends, where things are moving. Those are the pieces. And this is why I believe, and this is my personal opinion, I think Putin, yes, Vladimir Putin, he's going to be the winner of the geopolitical landscape game, because he understands how the pieces are moving. And also because Russia's natural gas, natural gas, Russia's going to be almost the top supplier of the world. So just to tie this back to what we were talking about earlier, yes, you will read different reports. You will hear different reports. I even went and checked one report that came out from the New York Times, Associated Press. And with the Associated Press, I gotta have to think twice before I take everything at a face value, given the reporting that was done about Xinjiang. So, this is where I see the importance of truly understanding how to read between the lines. And I am glad I got a chance to at least share some opinions with you regarding this issue of, not the issue regarding the incidents of the shutdown of the stands news, and as to why that the Chinese government decided to do that. But interesting enough, as I said earlier, that the Western media didn't talk about the shutdown of the cable news in Taiwan. And I found it very, usually stuff like this, I put a big question mark on it. So this is what I wanted to share with you guys. I am working, just to share this with you, I am working right now on a story that I do find very, very interesting. And it has to do with Iran and Saudi Arabia reestablishing diplomatic ties. That is a big, big deal in the Middle East, and makes me just wonder why all of a sudden the Saudis agree to this, because the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And I am wondering about what the motives behind it and why all of a sudden Saudi Arabia decided to move forward with that, despite what the US, the pressure from the US. So I will be sharing the info with you about that, and I'll provide a brief analysis about it. Since I wrote some books about both countries, so I'm a very, very familiar with their political orientation, their culture, their history, their languages. So, and I've been in that part of the world, so I'm very, very familiar with what's going on. So I look forward to sharing that with you. Remember to check us out at geopolitics.local.com, and remember to check out our membership at geopoliticsinconflict.com. Remember also follow me at Twitter at the Walalu. I do post some stuff there where I can share some information with you. So, as always, I thank you very much on behalf of the entire team. We thank you very much for your support. It means a lot to us, and I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate your feedback. I appreciate your questions. So I'm going to go back later on tonight or tomorrow and answer some of your questions. So I hope your day is going very well, and look forward to seeing you next time. Till then, stay informed and see you next time. Bye-bye.